In Genoa City, emotional wounds rarely healed quietly. They lingered beneath the surface, resurfacing at the most fragile moments when the people involved were least prepared to face them. Few families embodied that painful truth more than the tangled lives surrounding Mariah Copeland, Tessa Porter, and Sharon Newman. What had once been a story about love, resilience, and unconventional family bonds had now transformed into something far more complicated, shaped by fear, mistrust, and the devastating consequences of a moment that no one could fully undo. Recent revelations surrounding the turmoil within this family suggested that although Tessa had finally chosen to move forward with her life, Sharon might not be ready to let the past fade away so easily. For Sharon, the situation had become deeply personal, not simply because Mariah was her daughter, but because the fragile threads connecting this fractured family were unraveling faster than anyone could repair them. The crisis began with the shocking act that sent ripples through the entire Newman Abbott Winters circle. Mariah, once known for her fierce loyalty and emotional strength, had committed an act that left even the people who loved her struggling to understand the depths of her psychological collapse. In a moment of desperation and confusion, she kidnapped Dominic Newman Abbott Winters Chancellor, the child whose complicated family ties already carried enough emotional weight to destabilize anyone caught in the middle. Dominic represented more than a baby in Genoa City. He symbolized the fragile alliance between multiple powerful families. By taking him, Mariah had crossed a line that even her closest supporters could not easily defend. Although Mariah had been granted temporary freedom while awaiting trial, her release came with strict conditions that served as a constant reminder of how far she had fallen. The electronic monitor strapped to her ankle functioned as both a legal restraint and a psychological burden. Every step she took carried the invisible weight of surveillance, a symbol of the justice system's determination to ensure she would not disappear before facing the consequences of her actions. For Mariah, the device felt less like protection and more like a mark of shame, a daily reminder that the life she once knew had been shattered by a single catastrophic decision. The situation provided little comfort to Devin Winters and Abby Winters, the parents whose trust had been violently broken by Mariah's actions. Their fear for Dominic's safety lingered long after the crisis had passed, leaving them wary of every possible risk that could threaten their child again. Even with the legal restrictions placed upon Mariah, the emotional damage remained unresolved. The memory of someone they once trusted completely taking their son away was not something that could simply fade with time. Meanwhile, the legal battle surrounding Mariah's future had begun to take shape. Christine Blair was preparing for the upcoming trial, carefully assembling the evidence that would determine how the court would interpret Mariah's actions. For Sharon, the legal process felt agonizingly slow and painfully distant from the deeper issue that haunted her thoughts every day. Sharon understood that she could not interfere with the law, nor could she erase what had already happened. Yet, her instincts as a mother refused to let her stand by without trying to help Mariah rebuild the mental stability she had clearly lost. What worried Sharon most was not simply the trial or the potential sentence Mariah might face. It was the fragile state of Mariah's mind. The kidnapping had not come from cruelty or malicious intent. It had emerged from a psychological storm that Mariah herself had not fully understood. Sharon had spent years navigating her own battles with emotional trauma, and she recognized the warning signs that Mariah was spiraling into a dangerous place. If Mariah remained isolated from the people who once grounded her emotionally, Sharon feared that her daughter might collapse entirely. At the center of that emotional isolation stood Tessa. For months, Tessa had fought desperately to save the relationship she shared with Mariah. She had tried patience, compassion, and unwavering loyalty, hoping that the woman she loved would eventually find her way back from the darkness that had begun to consume her. But love, no matter how powerful, had limits. There comes a moment when even the most devoted partner realizes that continuing to fight alone can become its own form of self-destruction. Eventually, Tessa reached that moment. Choosing to walk away from Mariah was not an impulsive decision. It was the result of months of emotional exhaustion, sleepless nights, and the growing realization that her efforts were no longer reaching the person Mariah had become. Fans of the couple understood the pain behind that decision, and many sympathized with Tessa's choice to reclaim her own life. Sometimes the hardest act of love is knowing when to stop trying to fix someone who cannot yet save themselves. Yet even after stepping away from Mariah, Tessa remained protective of the one person who meant more to her than anyone else, Aria Porter Copeland. Arya represented hope, innocence, and the promise of a future untouched by the chaos surrounding the adults in her life. Protecting that child had become Tessa's highest priority, and the events surrounding Dominic's kidnapping forced her to reconsider who should be allowed near Arya. The thought of Mariah spending time with the baby now filled Tessa with uncertainty. She did not want to believe that Mariah could ever harm Arya, but the kidnapping had shattered the sense of security that once defined their family. If Mariah could lose control under pressure once, what guarantee existed that it would never happen again? These doubts haunted Tessa, forcing her to draw boundaries that would have once seemed unimaginable. Despite these fears, Tessa made one small concession that hinted at the lingering compassion she still carried. She allowed Sharon to visit Arya. The decision was not made lightly. Tessa trusted Sharon in ways she could no longer trust Mariah, and she understood how deeply Sharon loved her granddaughter. Allowing Sharon to maintain that connection felt like a compromise between protecting Arya and acknowledging the emotional bonds that had once held their family together. For Sharon, that permission opened the door to a possibility that had begun to form in her mind. She believed that Mariah's recovery might depend on rebuilding the sense of family she had lost. Sharon did not necessarily believe that Mariah and Tessa would reunite romantically, but she wondered whether restoring a connection to Arya could help stabilize Mariah's mental state. The idea carried enormous risk. Tessa's fears were not unfounded, and Sharon knew that pushing too hard could destroy the fragile trust she still shared with Tessa. Still, Sharon's instincts refused to let the matter rest. She had watched Mariah struggle through countless emotional battles over the years, and she knew that isolation was often the worst possible remedy for someone already drowning in guilt and shame. Sharon believed that if Mariah could reconnect with the people who once gave her purpose, Tessa, Arya, and the family they had built together, there might still be a path back from the darkness. The question that lingered over Genoa City now was whether Sharon's intervention would help or harm the situation. Reuniting Mariah with the family she had lost might provide the emotional anchor she desperately needed, but it could also reopen wounds that had not yet begun to heal, particularly for Tessa, who was still struggling to protect both her heart and her child. As the trial approached and the emotional stakes continued to rise, Sharon found herself standing at a crossroads between hope and caution. She believed that family could still save Mariah, yet she also knew that one wrong move could destroy the fragile balance holding everything together. In a city where secrets and emotional scars had the power to shape destinies, Sharon's decision to intervene might become the turning point that either restored a broken family or pushed it even further into heartbreak. Love in Genoa City rarely dissolves quietly. It fractures under pressure, reshapes itself around guilt, and resurfaces in unexpected ways when the people involved are least prepared. In the 3rd of March 2026 episode of The Young and the Restless, that fragile reality unfolded once again as Sharon Newman began to question whether Tessa Porter had moved on from Mariah Copeland too quickly. On the surface, Sharon's concerns could easily be interpreted as maternal protectiveness spilling over into interference. But beneath that surface, something far more complex was taking shape, an emotional calculation rooted in fear, trauma, and the desperate instinct of a mother who believes time is running out to save her daughter. Sharon understands better than most what it feels like to lose control of one's mental stability. She has walked through darkness before, fought battles against her own fractured perceptions, and rebuilt herself piece by piece. Watching Mariah unravel has awakened something primal inside her. While the legal consequences of Mariah's kidnapping of Dominic Newman Abbott, Winter's chancellor, remain in the hands of the court and Christine Blair, Sharon feels powerless in that arena. She cannot argue before a judge, she cannot erase evidence, and she cannot rewrite the past. But what she can attempt to influence is Mariah's emotional recovery. And in Sharon's mind, that recovery might hinge on reconnecting Mariah with the very family she has lost. From Sharon's perspective, Tessa and Arya represent stability, grounding, and the life Mariah once fought so hard to build. Arya Porter Copeland is not simply a child, she is a symbol of hope, continuity, and unconditional love. Sharon may believe that restoring even a partial connection to that family unit could anchor Mariah in reality, helping her regain the emotional footing she lost. If Mariah feels completely abandoned, Sharon fears that isolation could deepen her fragile state rather than heal it. In Sharon's view, Tessa and Arya are not obligations, they are lifelines. But Sharon's conviction collides directly with Tessa's boundaries. Tessa did not walk away from Mariah lightly. For months, she endured emotional instability, unpredictable behavior, and the slow erosion of trust that ultimately culminated in the kidnapping incident. When Mariah took Dominic, something fundamental broke. Even if Mariah never intended harm, the act itself forced Tessa to confront a terrifying question. If Mariah could lose control once, what might happen again under pressure? That fear does not vanish simply because Sharon believes in redemption. Tessa's priority is Arya's safety, both physical and emotional. A child should not grow up in the shadow of instability. Tessa understands that protecting Arya sometimes means making decisions that feel cold or unfair to others. While Sharon may interpret Tessa's distance as moving on too quickly, the truth is far more painful. Tessa likely moved forward because staying meant sacrificing her own mental well-being and potentially exposing Arya to uncertainty. Love does not require self-destruction, and Tessa has reached a place where self-preservation is no longer optional. Complicating matters further is Mariah's increasingly alarming psychological state. Reports of her experiencing hallucinations, particularly seeing Ian Ward, raise serious concerns. Ian represents manipulation, trauma, and the darkest chapters of Mariah's past. If Mariah is seeing him again, even as a hallucination, it signals that her grip on reality remains dangerously unstable. That instability strengthens Tessa's resolve to maintain distance, even if it breaks her heart. Into this emotional vacuum steps Daniel Romalotti Jr. Fans have grown fond of the connection developing between Daniel and Tessa, drawn to the quiet understanding and creative chemistry they share. Initially, Sharon did not oppose Tessa's decision to move forward with Daniel. She may have even believed it was inevitable. But now, as Mariah's condition worsens, Sharon's tolerance has shifted. Watching Tessa build something new while Mariah spirals feels to Sharon like watching the door to her daughter's recovery slam shut. The irony is that Sharon's change of heart may unintentionally alienate the very people she hopes to enlist. By questioning Tessa's choices or implying that she moved on too quickly, Sharon risks minimizing the pain Tessa endured. From Tessa's perspective, she did not abandon Mariah, she survived her, and if Daniel provides stability, comfort, and emotional safety, Tessa has every right to embrace that future. Sharon's desperation, though understandable, could easily cross into emotional manipulation if she pressures Tessa to prioritize Mariah over her own well-being. This tension raises the central moral dilemma: where does maternal devotion end and unfair expectation begin? Sharon's instinct to save her daughter is deeply human. No parent would willingly watch their child crumble without fighting back. Yet Mariah's recovery cannot rest solely on Tessa's shoulders. Unless Mariah actively seeks treatment, accountability, and proof that she can manage her condition, no external reunion will fix what is broken internally. Love cannot substitute for stability. At the same time, Sharon may see something others do not. She may recognize that Mariah's hallucinations and emotional volatility stem from profound abandonment fears. If Mariah believes she has lost everything, her partner, her child, her identity, those fears could amplify her instability. Sharon may genuinely believe that even a supervised, cautious reconnection could provide hope rather than harm. But hope without safeguards can quickly become recklessness. Daniel's involvement adds another layer of vulnerability. If Sharon's interference creates strain between Daniel and Tessa, the collateral damage could extend beyond Mariah's recovery. Daniel represents forward movement, a future not defined by crisis. If Sharon pushes too hard, she may inadvertently drive Tessa further away, not just from Mariah, but from any willingness to cooperate at all. Sharon risks transforming herself from supportive mother into perceived antagonist. Ultimately, the situation rests on a delicate balance between compassion and responsibility. Sharon is not wrong to want her daughter saved. Tessa is not wrong to protect her child. Mariah is not irredeemable, but she is not stable either. Each woman is acting from fear, from love, and from a different understanding of what safety looks like. So is Sharon overstepping, or is she fighting for her daughter's last chance at stability? The answer may lie somewhere in the uncomfortable middle. Sharon's motives are rooted in love, but love does not grant entitlement over others' lives. If she can advocate for Mariah's recovery without diminishing Tessa's boundaries, there may still be a path forward. But if desperation blinds her to Tessa's autonomy, the attempt to reunite a broken family could fracture it permanently. In Genoa City, redemption is always possible, but it is rarely simple. And as Sharon weighs her next move, one truth remains painfully clear: saving Mariah may require more than reunions and hope. It may require accountability, patience, and the painful recognition that love alone cannot heal what trauma has undone.